Personal goal when I ran for city council. And first, I was the first representative of a district, or at least District 1. My goal was to be the best elected official that this city has ever had. I'll leave history to say if that occurred. And I only promised myself I would stay 2 terms. I think that you can overstay yourself in public office to a point that decisions that you're making are not reflective of people, they're reflective of you. And I didn't want that to happen to me. And I decided that 2 terms on the Champaign City Council, that I felt that the people of Champaign was ready for me to do something else. So I ran for township supervisor. They decided I was not ready to do something else because
they didn't decide it by a big margin, as I recall.
No, but it takes 1 vote up or down,
yes,
and I didn't have that vote. So,
you said something about your attitude as a member of the council, that you really felt that anybody who came and wanted to speak to the city council should be heard.
Yes.
I think this reflects a general attitude you have, which is that the world, I mean, you say on the one hand that we need technocrats, we need people with facts, but I think at the same time you believe that the common man often has just the fact that may be necessary for someone to understand a problem. So
I'm a common man.
Okay.
There's nothing complicated about me. The reason I raised that point is that most elected bodies are like small clubs, and you have the feeling that they want to decide who can speak and who cannot speak. Now that I've left the council and when I reappear before Champaign City Council, I can feel the tension between those who are elected and myself, because I want to be heard, and constitutionally I have a right to be heard. And I don't feel government should operate in that fashion. Every man and woman should be heard regardless of who they are or their backgrounds.
Of course, they say to you, since you're not elected, and you're just here sort of appearing as a citizen, who do you represent, they ask.
Yes, I represent myself. But I've been coming to city halls in this city for over 20 years, long before I was elected. I was there as John Lee Johnson, there as chairman of the Concerned Citizens Committee, there as chairman of the CAD, Community Advocacy Depot. I just happened to get elected. And
sometimes you're simply there with a fact.
Yes.
Or a question.
But questions are not made relevant because one has a PhD or because one's been to a university.
Or because one leads a political party.
Question to me is based upon information and the relevance of that information to what the issues are. And you don't have to live in a certain section of Champaign-Urbana to possess that information.
But you know, you do operate in a kind of a verbal environment rather than a written one. For example, generally speaking, you haven't used the press, or you haven't been a letter to the editor writer.
The press has used me.
The press has used you,
yes.
Okay. Some people who have your bent, who have your interest in a community's issues, would have become a journalist. Might have written, might have tried to get people interested in things by writing a lot, putting this stuff in the paper. But you've chosen a rather more interesting path. You've gone and found people that you thought had power to make a difference, and then you've tried to persuade them to use their power
yes.
by presenting them with facts. People obviously do listen to you, that's clear. Then what? What's gone wrong? Why don't, I mean, is it not that enough of them listen, or don't they have the power that we think they have?
I think it's a combination of both. Some listened, but it depends upon the character of the person who's in authority. You'll find that there are a lot of people who are in authority who simply do not have the needed commitment to confront those that they must confront once this fact or facts are brought to them. And as a result of that, you're always relying on somebody else. You never have the control of the problem. Once you get that information, you realize, my God, there's Mr. X. That's the man I have to see. And once you see that person, then you realize there's some X behind that person. So it's an endless process. It's not only getting that information and getting it to the right person. That person must have the courage to carry it to the next stop.
And if he doesn't have it, you have to hold his hand and get there yourself somehow.
And if he refuses to go, then you start the battle all over again. I used to say it's the only ball game in town. It's a difficult game to play. But if you don't do that, what else do you do? I'm not the kind of guy who sits on the bench fishing. I don't like to do that.
You clearly don't give up. I mean, I think that's the thing that's most impressive about you, and it's a theme, by the way, that we've been investigating in this series of programs. People who see a problem, maybe one that in a sense can never be finally solved. I mean, Judy Warmbier will always find abandoned animals,
yes.
and she will always find abused animals. Chances are, for the rest of your life, you're going to find substandard housing, you're going to find people who, for no fault of their own, are unemployed, you're going to find people without medical care. And I guess to the tidy middle-class mind that says, let's wrap problems up and settle them, a life like yours is very hard to understand, because it would seem like you'll never, ever make it. You'll never finish this job. You must like the process, John Lee.
No, I do have a hidden dream that I am to be successful. And I think back, and when I look at an old lady smile because she's in a better home, when I see a kid who was a high school dropout and is now getting a college degree, when I see a school teacher that I knew as a kid and I got her through the University of Illinois, that makes the job worthwhile. But now there are no personal riches. I mean, I don't have any material things as a result of it, but there are quiet joys that you can't get by doing an 8 to 5. You know, I pride myself that I'm there when people call me, you know, and that's my motto. You know.
I should say that John Lee doesn't have a telephone number that you can look up, but there are people that take messages for him, and all I can tell you is that every time I've called, he's called back within 8 hours. This man calls back.
I used to say that my telephone was the public telephone booth on the corner of 2nd and University. You dial that booth and I'll be there in a minute.
Did it really work? Is it still true?
No, it was only a joke. Only a joke. You can't reach me that way.
But if you want to find John Lee, you could call me, for example, and I'll tell you how to get to him.
You can call the city building. And,
That's true. As chairman of the regional, let's see now, you're chairman of the Better Housing Committee. It's perfectly reasonable that you should receive calls at the Better Housing Committee office. In fact, we might even tell them what the number is for all those people out there who are watching this program.
These people wouldn't want to call me, though.
They wouldn't want to call you, okay.
No.
Maybe we'll just have to tell you that if you look up the Better Housing Committee, well, actually, it's listed in the phone book under Housing...
Community Development.
Community Development,
Yes.
Okay. Then you're on the Champaign County Regional Planning Committee Commission.
Yes, I represent the poor on that commission.
Yep.
In fact, we just had a big argument over this 150 units of Section 8 housing that's to be built in Champaign, and which I fought for as a member of the commission, and also fought for before the Champaign City Council as chairman of the BAC. Very few people understood that. Why do we need more Section 8 housing? Because there are people who still don't have any place to live in our town. And until everyone has a decent place to live, we're going to need Section 8 housing.
Well, housing isn't your only issue, John Lee. As you said, it ties to everything else. What of the future? If you had your druthers, if you could map out the rest of your life right now and have everything go well for you, where would we see John Lee? Would you still be in Champaign in 1995, say?
Hopefully you would see me in the United States Congress.
Okay.
The problem I have, I may have to turn white to do that. You know, or it may have to be a major shift in our population to get me there. I'm trying to convince all voters in this city that John Lee Johnson is somebody you can place your trust in. You know, I stand for the poor, I fight for the poor, and if you elect me, that's what I'm going to do. You know, some people have difficulties in that. You know.
Well, I guess the issue then comes, why, if I'm not poor, do I have an interest in what happens to the poor? And anyone who asks that question needs, I think, only to sit and reflect a while and answer it for himself.
Well, anyone who asks that question needs to spend some time on the 5th floor of Mercy Hospital.
Interesting.
Because we're all interrelated to each other. And when you have poor people in your community, then you have all kinds of problems. I think we all have a personal duty to see that all Americans enjoy the wealth of our country, and particularly the wealth of the Twin Cities. You know.
Something about the right to a reasonable chance for the pursuit of life, liberty,
That's true.
and happiness.
I think a major problem that we have is that we're becoming an isolated country, not by choice, because the rest of the world is growing up. And you know, we need every American. There is no American that we can stand back and allow their energies and their intellect to go wasted because they happen to be the wrong color or the wrong sex or born on the wrong side of the tracks. We need to educate every one of us, because in the future, America is going to need every American they got in order to survive. Now, it's difficult explaining that in a school board meeting. You know, when you're looking at 65% of the black kids in Champaign are almost EMH and barely can read and write, and saying that the responsibility here has got to be to teach these children how to learn. People are thinking about the competition. You know, if we teach them to learn, I can't get my daughter into university because he'll be there. You know. And there's so much ignorance that we have to override. And we need millions of people better than John Lee Johnson to solve